Hello. I don't plan him to be here every time. So today we are here to talk about heterocycles, which are these things. So really all that means is it's a ring that has an atom other than nitrogen or other than carbon that's part of the ring, right? So in this case, our benzene similar structure has a nitrogen in it, right? So we'll talk about that in some more detail later. But that's what we're talking about, these sort of things. It doesn't have to be aromatic to be a heterocycle. It just has to have another atom in it as far as things go. Nobody's going to be looking or paying attention to me because my cat just refuses to not be in organic chemistry. So heterocycles can be aromatic. The issues that we tend to run into is with these types of molecules. I've got two. They have lone pairs of electrons, right? So if you remember our rules for when something was aromatic or not, that included a specific count to the number of electron pairs, and it matters where they are, right? So if that extra lone pair causes the molecule to have 4 pairs of electrons counted towards resonance, then it's not aromatic anymore, right? So it might be anti-aromatic, it might be non, but in general, those can make changes as far as things go. So the key with heterocycles is when does the lone pair count, right? So this example is pyridine. I recognize the nitrogen is backwards. You can figure it out though. Pyridine is very, very similar to benzene, other than this nitrogen here, which has a lone pair of electrons. If that lone pair of electrons counted towards resonance, then you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, right? That's an even number, so that's not going to work. And so this is my model of pyridine. And so the question is, all right, do these lone pairs of electrons count towards aromaticity? Pyridine is planar, right? It has a cyclic pi system because every other bond around the ring is a double bond. And so the key to these, though, really is remembering where are those actual pi electrons? The actual pi electrons are really actually sitting here where my fist is and down here. And so that cyclic pi system is up there and down there. If you notice where this lone pair is on my molecular model, it's sticking up and out in the same place where the hydrogens are. Right? Does it make sense that that then can get involved in that cyclic pi system? No, not really. So if my aromatic electrons are up here, right, this is sticking out on the edge, it doesn't really get involved. So when you're counting the lone pairs and pi bonds and the different electrons that could take part in resonance, because lone pairs can, in this case, we wouldn't count those because that double bond there forces that lone pair to be planar. Then the only ones that count are these 3. So pyridine is still aromatic. So pyridine gets yes. The other molecule, and these two examples are the only two kinds of structures you can see with nitrogen are, all right, well, does this nitrogen have 4 areas, or is it double bonded? In this case, this nitrogen has 2 single bonds on either side. You notice from the arrows, it still has a lone pair. It has a hydrogen as well, and that changes the structure of this molecule. So this is that same structure. This is pyrrole, 2 double bonds, 5-membered ring instead of 6. Notice the lone pair kind of looks different now. Does it make sense that this one would count, right? So this is now pushed up, right? And it's up in that space where the aromaticity can happen, and so it does count, right? So if we're looking at pyrrole, 1, 2, only 2 double bonds, but lone pairs can count towards aromaticity and resonance too, because they help complete that cycle all the way around. So you got 1, 2, 3 now. That lone pair does count, and then this molecule is also aromatic. Right, so we're looking at molecules that can and could be aromatic. We're trying to decide, is it or is it not? Whether or not that nitrogen has a lone pair you want to look at, whether or not that nitrogen has a double bond as well, because that can force it to be planar. So it's really all about the geometry here. Is that lone pair sticking up where it can count, or is it sticking out where it cannot, right? And the biggest difference is, is that nitrogen attached by a double bond here, like where my finger is tapping here? That makes a big difference as far as things go. So you can get a lot of different structures with heterocycles, but those are the main ones. So let's change this up. So pyrrole, what if this were an oxygen atom, though, instead? I'll swap out my green for a red, just to be consistent. All right, the oxygen atom there only has 2 bonds, 2 lone pairs, just like H2O. And this one's a little bit trickier, right? So oxygen, what we'll end up counting, and it's a little hard to see from this structure because it kind of looks like top bottom, like it would work. So what ends up happening is one will share and one will not. So one ends up being sort of forced planar, and one ends up being up in the group. So if you have an oxygen with 2 lone pairs, like this structure here, the furan is the name of it. One counts, one does not, right? Which is a little bit trickier as far as things go. All right, so that is essentially what we got to kind of look at for heterocycles and aromatic compounds.